Вот, Михаил, здравствуйте.
Приветствуйте, Микки.
Доброе утро. Как дела у вас? Как здоровье?
Отлично, все хорошо. Сами как?
Ничего, нормально все. Рад вас видеть. Что-то сейчас такая загрузка, обязательно заеду к вам в гости.
Хорошая у вас заставка. Такое ощущение, как будто вы сидите на площади перед зданием. Но поскольку тепло, почти плюсовая температура, да, раздетый. Такой.
Оптимистично, да? Оптимистично.
Да.
На фоне холодной погоды.
Ну, сегодня в сравнении с 2 днями раньше довольно тепло.
Да.
Вообще обещает плюсовую температуру сегодня.
Замечательно было бы. Будет оптимистично.
С одной стороны замечательно, с другой начнет снег таять, будет слякоть и потом замерзнет. Уж лучше стабильно.
Минус 30 спокойно.
Началась зима, так все уже началась.
Да. Манарбек Шакирович сейчас у узбеков, да, сейчас?
Да, вроде, да, сегодня, да, у узбеков. Мероприятие. Завтра они ко мне сюда придут.
Это международный институт, да, вот этот, который в Центральной Азии?
Да.
Mute. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's special event titled 30th Anniversary of Independence of the Republic of Kazakhstan and Relations with Pakistan. I'm Osama Nizamani, System Research Associate at IPRI, and I will be the master of the ceremony for today's event. Before we begin the proceedings, I request everyone to kindly turn their cell phones on silent mode, and we will begin the proceedings with the recitation of Holy Quran.
Лидия, доброе утро. А где Ержан Айдарович-то наш?
Доброе утро. Он,
как
к сожалению... Да ничего, вот я тоже, видите?
Ну да, делите наше задание. Ну ладно, соседи наши.
Today's event commemorates 30 years of Kazakhstan's independence and its bilateral relations with Pakistan. IPRI, in collaboration with Kazakh Embassy, is co-hosting the hybrid event with participation in each session by 2 panel members, each from both countries. We're also pleased to have Ambassador His Excellency Yerzan Kistafin, Kazakhstan's ambassador to Pakistan, and Ambassador His Excellency Sajjad Ahmad Sihar, Pakistan's ambassador to Kazakhstan, for delivering the welcome address of this event. Today's event comprises 5 sessions. Each session will contain a brief question and answer session. Our first session is Leadership Phenomenon of Nur Sultan Nazarbayev and Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Qaid-e-Azam, in making statehood of Kazakhstan and Pakistan a reality. The first speaker for the session is Mr. Temur Shemerganov, Deputy Director, the Library of the First President of the Republic of Kazakhstan. And our second speaker is Dr. Talat Shabir, Director, China-Pakistan Studies Center and at the Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad. Pardon me. The second session is Kazakhstan's foreign policy, major achievements and aspirations. Our first speaker for this session is Ambassador Bulat Nurgaliyev, Chairman of the Board Foreign Policy Research Institute. And the second speaker for this session is Brigadier Rashid Wali Junjua, Acting President, Islamabad Policy Research Institute, who will present a perspective from Pakistan on Pakistan's foreign policy towards Kazakhstan. The third session is Kazakhstan on the path of domestic socio-political reforms. The first speaker for this session is Dr. Murad Laumulin, Chief Research Fellow at Kazakhstan Institute of Strategic Studies. And the second speaker for this session is Lieutenant Colonel Khalid Tamur Akram, retired, Executive Director, Center for Global and Strategic Studies. The fourth session is Economic Development of Kazakhstan, Outcomes and Competitiveness. The first speaker for this session is Mr. Bezangazin Khwanish, Director of the Center for Macroeconomic Research and Forecasting. And the second speaker from Pakistan is Mr. Raja Rafiullah, Research Fellow at the Pakistan Institute of Development Economics. The fifth session is Kazakhstan-Pakistan Interaction in Quest for Collaboration. The first speaker from Kazakhstan for this session is Ms. Lydia Parkomachik. The second speaker for this session is Dr. Tanveer Khalid, Honorary Secretary, Pakistan Institute of International Affairs. Today's event will also witness the signing of an MOU ceremony between IPRI and FPRI at the conclusion of the second session. We now begin the proceedings of this event today. I will request all our speakers to confine their presentation to the allotted time of 10 minutes, given the paucity of time, and for keeping the sessions on given time track. With this request, I now ask Ambassador, His Excellency Yerzan Kestafin, to kindly deliver his welcome address. Ambassador.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear ladies and gentlemen, very good morning. Allow me to extend on behalf of the Embassy of Kazakhstan to Pakistan a profound gratitude for accepting our invitation to be part of this very important roundtable dedicated to the 30th anniversary of Kazakhstan's independence. My special thanks to the brilliant team of Islamabad Policy Research Institute, and personally to Mr. Rashid Wali Junjua for the resolute support to the embassy in arranging and organizing this meeting. Dear colleagues, the 30th anniversary of our independence is of particular importance for people of my country, who 30 years ago started their long nation-building journey and now can see and enjoy what they have achieved so far. We are about to celebrate this anniversary in awareness that we proved to be successful in many ways. We managed to build up a strong and viable state with a united and cohesive society, which is highly educated and ready for global competitive environment. This all has been achieved thanks to tireless and skillful statesmanship of the first president of Kazakhstan and leader of nation Nursultan Nazarbayev, whose unique political legacy is safe and being developed by the incumbent president of Kazakhstan, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev. Just yesterday, our country celebrated the day of the first president of Kazakhstan. And I believe that no doubt that our first president played a crucial role in developing of our country. Dear colleagues, I believe that this roundtable, in terms of its range and level of participation, is something which never happened before in relationship of expert communities of Kazakhstan and Pakistan. Thus, its occurrence under the aegis of the 30th anniversary of Kazakhstan independence is very symbolic and makes me certain that intellectual gatherings and assemblies alike will gain in nearest future a regular character due to steady intensification of immediate contacts between leading think tanks of Kazakhstan and Pakistan. My strong belief is that expertly interlinks of this kind are essential in making scholars and intellectuals of two countries better cognizant of their politics and aspirations on the global stage. Apart from that, enhancement of this sort of contacts are vital for making our societies closer to each other on a people-to-people basis. Many times I mentioned that the people-to-people dimension is extremely important for developing cooperation between our countries, because the main, I would say, challenge that we need to address is the lack of information. And in this term, I believe that collaboration between our banks could contribute greatly in this term. As for the Embassy of Kazakhstan to Pakistan, we are strongly encouraging collaboration between experts of Kazakhstan and Pakistan and trying to make a humble contribution of our own in making that collaboration sound. This roundtable is manifestation of these efforts, and there will be even more. Extension of humanitarian links network between Kazakhstan and Pakistan is a constant priority in daily activities of the Embassy of Kazakhstan to Pakistan. This is to say that think tanks of Kazakhstan and Pakistan are more than welcome to address to the embassy their requests inspired by the quest for bilateral collaboration. Next year, we are planning to hold another very important event, expert meeting on the occasion of the 30th anniversary of diplomatic relations establishment between our two countries. That upcoming event will be purely on development of Kazakh-Pak relations and their future perspectives, with strong intention to work out concrete and practical measures on making these relations to move forward. As for the current assembly, I again reiterate my appreciation to all of you and wish fruitful discussions. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Ambassador Yerzan. I will now request Pakistan's ambassador to Kazakhstan, His Excellency Sajjad Ahmad Sihar, to kindly deliver his welcome address.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you so much, honorable participants of online roundtable held to celebrate 30th anniversary of Republic of Kazakhstan. It is unique honor and privilege for me to speak in this august forum. First of all, let me congratulate to my Kazakh brothers and sisters on 30th anniversary of independence. We look forward to celebrate 30th anniversary on 16th of December this year here in Nur Sultan, the beautiful city of Kazakhstan. During these 30 years, ladies and gentlemen, Kazakhstan have made great strides towards progress and developments. On this occasion, we pray for progress and prosperity of our brotherly country, Kazakhstan. Pakistan was among the first few countries which recognized Kazakhstan when it attained independence in December 1991. Under the leadership of Prime Minister Imran Khan, our government intends to further enhance our relations to new heights. The 10th session of Intergovernmental Joint Commission, which was held in November last month in Almaty, the business forum with participation of 30 companies, and last year in 2020, the 9th session and first ever bilateral political consultation are the major events which were held. We are working together with Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Kazakhstan on implementations of these decisions. We are cooperating on every multilateral forum, UN, OIC, SCO, SICA. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been reiterating that Pakistan and Kazakhstan enjoy cordial and brotherly relations that are bound by our common values, geography, history, and culture. Our relations are based on common approach towards world issues, as well as mutual understanding and goodwill for each other. We appreciate Kazakhstan's role as a country which contributed toward regional as well as international peace and security. We have high regard for the leadership of Kazakhstan with their vision about modernization program for Kazakhstan that will make Kazakhstan joining world's top 30 developed countries by 2050. Ladies and gentlemen, this is very important to say here that Kazakhstan owes its stability, political stability, economic progress to its leadership. LBC first President Nursultan Nazarbayev and President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev. In the end, I'll again reiterate, ladies and gentlemen, that Pakistan and Kazakhstan are natural partners. Pakistan provides a natural link to connect Euro-Asian heartland with Arabian Sea and South Asia. We offer critical overland routes and connectivity for mutual benefit trade, energy transaction between Kazakhstan and South Asia. And it all depends, if not a lot depends on the peace and stability in Afghanistan. We pray for the peace and security in Afghanistan. And I'm sure as this roundtable will progress, we'll have a lot of good suggestions coming up in the next sessions. And in the end, there's a huge potential to improve trade and connectivity between Pakistan and Kazakhstan. Of course, the connectivity is the most important factor, and it will increase the people-to-people contact. And we are all working for that goal. And again, in the end, I pray for the peace and prosperity of our region, and especially Kazakhstan, and again congratulate you the participants and our brothers and sisters for the 30th anniversary. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Sajjad Ahmad Sihar. As we begin our today's proceedings, I will once again serve a soft reminder to our speakers to kindly confine themselves to their allotted time. With this, I now request the first speaker for the first session, Mr. Temur Shemerganov, Deputy Director, the Library of the First President of the Republic of Kazakhstan, to resume his presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank our embassy in Islamabad for invitation. I'm happy to see all the friends from Kazakhstan, and special regards to our colleagues from Pakistan think tanks. We will be glad to have regular and direct expert dialogue with you. The discussion of Kazakhstan's achievements on the eve of great national holiday of the 30th anniversary of our independence is very significant. And it's also symbolic because just yesterday we celebrated the day of the first president of Kazakhstan, devoted to Nursultan Nazarbayev, who is the founder of modern Kazakh state. All the achievements of our republic are associated with his name. We can talk about this topic for a long time, but following the regulations of our event, I will only underline some of the most important results. So let's start. The history of Kazakhstan in many ways is the history of effective responses to the challenges that our young state faced 30 years ago. Our first president, Nursultan Nazarbayev, successfully managed as finding the keys to solving all the crises as transforming it into certain national dividends and bonuses. That's why today Kazakhstan is recognized as a strong, confidently developing country with a great capacity and bright future. But before that recognition, the number of strategic challenges had to be resolved. First, as you know, today in the world, we see the growth of xenophobia, inter-ethnic conflicts, and religious extremism. Many remember that in the first years of Kazakhstan's independence, the famous American political scientist Zbigniew Brzezinski predicted collapse of Central Asia due to the multi-ethnic and multi-confessional composition of our population. His words were based on tragic experience of the former Yugoslavia that doesn't exist today, Tajikistan, Nagorno-Karabakh, North Caucasus nations, where bloody interesting conflicts had happened. For Kazakhstan, located on the global geopolitical axis of instability, this scenario was quite realistic. But thanks to a balanced governmental policy, our country has managed to turn the ethnic, linguistic, religious diversity into a consolidating factor of our nation. Kazakhstan has created an effective model of interethnic and interreligious harmony and incorporated it in the political system. Its institutional core is Assembly of Kazakhstan People, a unique public institution today that has high constitutional status. Moreover, Kazakhstan initiated such global dialogue platforms as the Congress of Leaders of World and Traditional Religions. Today, we can surely say that it's the only regular operating platform for the interaction of world religions on the international level. Second, another threat to existence of mankind is the ongoing challenge of nuclear war. This year, on August 29, international community has celebrated the significant date of the 30th anniversary of the closure of Simpalatis nuclear test site. That was the hugest nuclear weapon polygon in the world. During 40 years, we have suffered from 450 nuclear explosions of all possible types. Back in 1991, Nursultan Nazarbayev, by his decree, closed nuclear test site. And Kazakhstan voluntarily renounced one of the biggest world nuclear military arsenal inherited from USSR. Thus, today, Kazakhstan confidently retains its status as one of the leaders of the global anti-nuclear movement. The decision to shut down the nuclear test site launched the way for comprehensive nuclear test ban treaty in 1996. Today, about 185 countries have joined it and 170 have ratified the treaty. It's important that all the global powers of the World Nuclear Club still observe the moratorium on testings. That's Kazakhstan's feasible contribution into global security. In addition, on the initiative of Nursultan Nazarbayev, our country has built and placed on its territory international low-enriched uranium bank under International Atomic Energy Agency. The bank stores and supplies nuclear fuel for nuclear power plants for member states of International Atomic Energy Agency. And thus, we give an option to the nations who would like to have peaceful atom and transparent energy programs. And again, we decrease the risks for global nuclear security. Third, one of the most dangerous challenges in the modern world is the issue of state borders. We see how unresolved border issues lead to large-scale conflicts for decades. Realizing this, Nursultan Nazarbayev first of all ensured the international legal registration of national borders, creating a belt of peace and good neighborhood along entire border perimeter with a length of 14,500 kilometers. The significance of this fact is also more important because Kazakhstan's neighbors are the two largest states in the world, Russia and China. The border with China is 1,700 kilometers, and with Russia it exceeds 7,500 kilometers, being the longest land border in the world. So we had to remove all the challenges in this area, and we did that. Based on successful experience of resolving border issues, Nursultan Nazarbayev, together with neighboring countries, initiated the creation of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Today is a large regional platform that ensures stability on the territory of almost 60% of Eurasian continent. And we welcome Pakistan to be a member of state of SCO from 2017. Fourth, Kazakhstan has made a focus on development of human capital as a key driver of country's progress. On the initiative of Nursultan Nazarbayev at the dawn of independence in 1993, the Bolshak International Scholarship was established. It enables our young citizens to study at the best universities in the world and to improve their professionalism. Today, over 12,000 of professionals have received education in the global top universities, and they contribute in the development of all spheres of our society. That Nazarbayev's decisions ensured a high level of human capital in Kazakhstan. Today, our country is in the global top 50 by human development. Fifth, from the very beginning, Kazakhstan develops according to a clear strategic plan. We can find in the media that many experts consider that the source of Kazakhstan's achievements are the oil reserves, but it's mistaken. As world history shows, there is no direct connection between rich natural resources capacity and prosperity of a nation. It's not enough to have rich natural resources. Still, the resources need to be effectively managed as economically as politically. We can find many examples of natural resources rich but very unstable countries. Just one example of it. We all know that the largest oil reserves on the planet today belong to Venezuela, up to 20% of world oil reserves. Logically, this Latin American country should lead the world ratings of economic and social development. However, in reality, the situation is exactly the opposite. Oil-rich Venezuela is close to be a failed state. For comparison, Kazakhstan's oil reserve amount is less than 2% of world reserves, and Kazakhstan is in top 50 global nations by economic development. In other words, the natural resources capacity itself does not guarantee to any nation either political stability or social economic well-being. Only successful modernization based on professional governance and certain development strategy are the key success factors. In our country, we have Kazakhstan 2050 national strategy based on research forecasting and economic calculation. This strategy was launched by Nursultan Nazarbayev about 9 years ago. And it means that we have clearly planned its development of our country for long-term period of time. And today, with political legacy is continued in policy of the President of Kazakhstan, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev. Dear participants, there are just several lines to describe successful government experience in Kazakhstan that we call as Nazarbayev model. It's interesting as from the point of history research or political science, and it has great practical application both within individual states and at the global level. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Shamarganol. I will now request Dr. Talat Chabir to kindly present his views. I may also like to state that Dr. Talat Chabir may not be able to join us for the rest of the event today. But with that said, I will request him to kindly join us on the stage after the conclusion of his remarks for the question and answer session. Over to you, sir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's my profound privilege to represent Institute of Strategic Studies Islamabad here. The title of my presentation is such that I never needed to do any kind of research because any material on Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah is an open source in our country. It's my profound privilege also to talk about the great Qaid. And since you had, Taimur had many things to tell about his leader, his Qaid, we have Pakistan to, in fact, reflect Qaid's achievement. In terms of political attributes, a charismatic leader possesses exceptional, extraordinary personal qualities. He has ability to offer the followers a way out of their difficult and distressful situations, a formula for their salvation. He must have an absolute faith in himself, his mission and cause that he espouses. He must be rational, passionate, and he must have the ability to manifest his charisma before attaining power. Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, founder of Pakistan, had all these attributes. Jinnah was a man of who was absolutely sure of himself and his cause, and had immense faith in himself, and never courted popularity. Jinnah was the kind of person who could neither be bought nor cajoled. Neither he influenced nor trapped into a position that he had not himself decided. Jinnah not only could feel Muslim aspirations, but he was the only Muslim leader of India who could articulate and express the ambitions in concrete propositions. Jinnah was a constitutionalist and a lawyer who perfectly suited to negotiations with British to secure interests of Muslims of India. The final phase of struggles that he did for freedom of this country. He was part of almost all constitutional deliberations in India, be it inside assemblies or outside. Jinnah was a powerful strategist who knew well when to take the tide and when to make amends. He always knew his boundaries as well as the weak points of his opponents. Thus, through his unrivaled tactical skills, he was able to take advantage of every situation, however difficult and uncompromising. Jinnah was a man of strong character. Almost all of his contemporaries in politics saw him as a man of high integrity, principles, sincerity, honesty, and incorruptibility and honor. Dr. Sayyid Hussain, a nationalist Muslim and Congress minister who opposed the idea of Pakistan, swore publicly, quote, "Though I oppose the idea of Pakistan, I must say that Mr. Jinnah is the only man in public life whose public record is incorruptible. You cannot buy him." Jinnah's formula, as given in Lahore resolution, had tremendous appeal for Muslims as it ensured them physical protection and political survival, as well as an independent political community, free to shape its own destiny according to its own religion, culture, and norms. By majority of politicians in Indian subcontinent, Jinnah was considered as the charismatic leader of Muslim India due to his far-sightedness and way of handling things and his public presence. Jinnah's views on constitution and the character of state were absolutely clear and had no political confusion. He left to the Constituent Assembly of Pakistan to decide what type of system or constitution they wanted for the country. It reflected in speeches that he envisioned democracy embodying the essential principles of Islam. Summing up, Jinnah succeeded in his mission because he led despaired, directionless people at a particularly distressful time in the history of this continent. Through his charismatic leadership with an abiding faith in himself, as well as in the cause that he chased. Jinnah became the guiding light for the Muslims of Indian subcontinent. Now it is with Qaid's vision of Pakistan that carries for us the recipe for success and glory. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen, now we will begin the question and answer session. We will only accommodate 2 questions for the session. So I may request our audience, if they have any questions, to kindly raise their hand and put up their question.
Correspondent. First of all, Excellency, congratulations on your 30th anniversary. And I'm really happy that the think tank has chipped in as well, because we are looking forward to your December the 8th reception. But I think you're pretty very close to it as well, that you managed to gather you there. What further steps do you intend to take? Because your predecessor now is the Deputy Foreign Minister. He was well versed with Pakistani dynamics, he served there in the 90s. And what specific steps do you have in mind to strengthen this broader friendship between the 2 countries? Pakistan was one of the earliest countries to recognize your country and your independence. And what about media contacts? Apparently, out of all the stans in those Indonesia, Brother Ahmad was that perhaps the least visited by the media is your country. Despite Corona, would you like to open up your country for documentaries, for visits, so that people contact can be established? The cost, please.
Well, thank you so much for your question. As I mentioned several times, the main issue that we need to address is the lack of information. So we need to fill the gap. So in this term, I believe that we should be focused not only on developing our economic cooperation, but also on people-to-people dimension. And in this term, again, I believe that this interaction, cooperation between our think tanks is of utmost importance. So when it comes to our cooperation between media communities, it's another very important, pillar. And next year, we are planning to establish collaboration between our TV channels, between our newspapers, so on and so forth. So I believe this is the best, the fastest, I would say, route to reach to our communities and to raise awareness about each other. Let me give you just one example. Two weeks I spent in Nur Sultan and in Almaty in Kazakhstan. So we organized for the first time the Kazakhstan Pakistan Business Forum. It was the very first event dedicated to developing ties between our business communities. And most of the people who came to Kazakhstan, they were for the first time in our country. And as they say, it was kind of eye-opener. So I believe that such interaction and such events should take place on regular basis. And next year we are planning to hold another event dedicated to, developing our B2B ties, our people-to-people. I always say that when it comes to collaboration between our think tanks, it's kind of, intellectual diplomacy. So we should be focused. We should not be focused again only on our trade. We should develop our, and diversify our cooperation between Kazakhstan and Pakistan. And in this term, next year we are planning to organize cultural events. We are planning to, again, establish collaboration between our media communities, between our think tanks, and of course our universities. It's well known that Pakistan is the youngest nation in the world. So if we want to build a solid foundation for our long-term partnership, we should be also focused on our young generation. So we have a lot of things to do, and I'm happy to say that during our ambassadorial conference with participation of our president, His Excellency Mr. Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, he confirmed that he is planning to visit your beautiful country next year. So I believe that next year will be a very special one, and I hope that through our joint efforts we will be able to open a brand new chapter in the history of our bilateral relations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Yerzan. Now I will request from the audience or either from our panel over here, if we could have a joint question for our co-panelists. Yes, Mr. Istiak.
Thank you for your question. So let me tell you that our special envoy of the President of Kazakhstan on International Affairs, His Excellency Mr. Yerzan Kazakhan, he visited recently Kabul, and he had talks with the Taliban and with the new government of Afghanistan. So as of today, our main focus is to restore our bilateral trade and to help our Afghan friends to overcome this crisis. So again, when it comes to developing cooperation between Kazakhstan and Pakistan, I always say that it's not only, it would be useful and fruitful not only for our two countries, but in general for the whole region, including Afghanistan. When it comes to developing cooperation between Central Asia and Southern Asia in general, Afghanistan can serve as a regional transit hub. And probably Afghanistan could be and would be one of the most beneficial parts of this cooperation. It's well known that, as you mentioned, that Kazakhstan is the biggest landlocked country in the world. And probably Kazakhstan, as no one else, understands the meaning of interregional connectivity. So nowadays, regional cooperation, regional connectivity is the name of the game. So we believe that if we join our efforts, our potentials with Pakistan, it would be useful for the whole region, including Afghanistan. Thank you.
I may have one question for Dr. Talat Shabir and also for Mr. Tamoor. Given the ongoing shift in Pakistan, especially towards geoeconomics, how do you, both of you, see from respective ends prospects for both Pakistan and Kazakhstan to expand their cooperation in areas of trade and connectivity? So over to you, sir.
I think it's very important to realize that it was the right time to shift from geostrategic to geoeconomics. I think this is the era of geoeconomics. And particularly when we see, and there are many things happening like Belt and Road Initiative of China, ambitious project, and China-Pakistan Economic Road. And when we talk of these two economic ventures, we expect a lot of expansion towards Afghanistan, through Afghanistan, peace in Afghanistan, of course, and to Central Asia. And Central Asia, I think, can bring wonders for Pakistan. So I think it's the right time to focus on what we can and how we can explore opportunities in Central Asia. And of course, I think if Belt and Road Initiative or we can reap the fruits of CPEC and Belt and Road Initiative, Central Asia is the most important region. And as one of the speakers has also mentioned, that it's become fulcrum of Eurasia landmass. So I think it's very appropriate time to have a wider interaction with South Asian, Central Asian countries, particularly Kazakhstan is a very important country for Pakistan, and I think we have a future linked to if we look at our at that moment we look at our Belt and Road Initiative or CPEC from perspective of these two economic ventures.
Thank you, Dr. Talat Shabir. I may now request Mr. Tamoor to kindly share his views also on the question.
Thank you so much. From my point of view, we have a huge capacity for extending our trade relations, but we need to follow first. Yes, we need the connectivity. We can use the Belt and Road Initiative as a platform. For example, as you know, Kazakhstan is one of the leaders in the Belt and Road infrastructural development, and we operate about 70% of all the trade between China and Europe today. And what we can do is just to build more connectivity between Kazakhstani part of Belt and Road and China-Pakistan economic route, as it was mentioned. So with physical connectivity will help us to extend the amount of trade goods going between our nations. And another one is we need to improve the regulations, for example, trade, and we can use the platform of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, its economic and trade dimension, for example. These two options, I think, we need to use in the coming years. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to both the panelists. On this note, now we will commence towards our second session. The second session is on Kazakhstan's foreign policy, major achievements and aspirations. The first speaker is Ambassador Bolat Nurgaliev, Chairman of the Board, Foreign Policy Research Institute, which is under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Kazakhstan. So I will request Ambassador Nurgaliev to kindly commence his presentation.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, do you hear me? Excellencies, Assalamu alaikum. I'm glad to greet you from snowy Nur Sultan, along with my good friend, Ambassador Sajjad Ahmed Sihar, and our Kazakhstani colleagues from four analytical structures, and extend my sincere wishes for fruitful discussion within the framework of the 5 sessions of today's roundtable. Occasions like this give the speakers opportunity to share their perspective of the topic and offer the audience their personal take of events that have taken place throughout the 30 years of since Kazakhstan gained independence. Early December 1991, 15 newly independent republics emerged on the ruins of the USSR and stepped into the unknown. As you are aware, the Supreme Soviet declared independence of Kazakhstan on the 16th of December, thus opening doors for diplomatic recognition of our republic. We are grateful to friendly countries which were among the first to welcome Kazakhstan and offer their unwavering support in the process of strengthening our territorial integrity, state sovereignty, and political independence. In this regard, Kazakhstan was more lucky than other post-Soviet countries because we were led by Nursultan Nazarbayev, who possesses wisdom of a true statesman, a man of clear strategic vision and lucid, sharp understanding of international realities. He enjoys great respect throughout the former Soviet Union as a man of reason in the times of turmoil and chaos. His proposals on the best ways to ensure swift and non-problematic transit were much appreciated, and their implementation was instrumental in shaping the course of history of statehood of newly independent republics and good neighborly relations among them. Understandably, and our Pakistani friends know it too well from their own historic experience, it is extra hard to move smoothly from one arrangement, being part of empire and run by a distant center, to another when decisions are to be taken independently. Add to this disruption of economic ties between republics, collapse of law and order structures, demoralization of armed forces. How to avoid bloodshed when all of a sudden nobody would call you to responsibility for hostility against your former neighbors who happen to be of a different ethnicity or religious faith, or whose forefathers might have grabbed the land that you believe is rightfully yours. In a way, it is a miracle that the former Soviet Union space, largely, with a few exceptions like Nagorno-Karabakh, Transnistria, and some other hotspots, escaped outbreak of armed hostilities among republics which for nearly 70 years of living together in one state officially enjoyed relations of brotherhood and friendship. And it is not just a boastful claim of Soviet propaganda. Indeed, the Soviet people used to treat each other as sisters and brothers, as equals, irrespective of ethnicity. And this was decidedly proven during the Great Patriotic War of 1941-1945, when all able-bodied men and women of the USSR, Russians, Kazakhs, Ukrainians, Uzbeks, Tajiks, Tatars, and millions of others rose to defeat invading Nazi Germany and her European satellites. Among first hard decisions in the realm of foreign policy were whether to form a Commonwealth of Asian republics or join association announced by the leaders of 3 Slavic republics. Nursultan Nazarbayev decided that the best way to serve vital interests of common people, to keep economies of new countries running, including through ensuring free cross-border movement of goods, services, people, and capital, would be to promote integration in the entire post-Soviet space. Our president suggested to other presidents together in the then capital of Kazakhstan to legalize the creation of the Commonwealth of Independent States in the now famous Alma-Ata Declaration. 30 years on, the strategic wisdom of that choice is proven beyond doubt. The CIS is still a win-win for all its members, politically, economically, and most important, humanely, making life easier for ordinary people who enjoy the freedom of travel and employment within the territories of the Commonwealth participating states. We believe that the creation of the CIS ensured stability and predictiveness in the vast Eurasian space and became a major contribution to global security. I joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Kazakhstan in May '92, right after returning from India, where I went as the first secretary of the Embassy of the Soviet Union, which within 2 years became the Embassy of the Russian Federation. In his book On the Threshold of the 21st Century, published in 1996, Nursultan Nazarbayev described the situation of that period in the following words. We had no tradition of foreign policy activities. Just imagine a country facing plenty of extremely difficult problems, but having not a single diplomatic mission abroad. Not even elementary conceptual approaches to foreign policy issues, no qualified personnel. The absurdity of this situation was compounded by the fact that Kazakhstan, while possessing highly developed economic potential, vast resources of minerals, nuclear weapons on its territory, had no international agreement with anybody. Thus, among the pressing matters were the following: how to correlate Kazakhstan's potential with its actions abroad. What should be the main directions of our foreign policy? How to balance regional and global interests of the country. How to approach solution of international security problems, including the fate of nuclear weapons located in our territory. Have in mind that we had close to 1,300 nuclear warheads on 104 ICBMs and cruise missiles. If we are to get rid of these nuclear weapons infrastructure, how to ensure diplomatically national security interests of Kazakhstan? Now, looking back to those early years of Kazakhstan's foreign policy implementation, I am proud to have been part of the team which was engaged in the process of formulating the right answers to these pressing issues. The main achievement is that throughout 30 years, Kazakhstan had no conflict in relations with major partners, positioned itself as a model of economic and social modernization, reliable and predictable member of international community of civilized nations. The fundamental principles of our foreign policy are constant. From the outset to this day, our policy is peace-loving, responsible, and devoid of any hostility in regards of any country, nearby or far away. We do not have territorial claims to anyone. We strive to maintain good neighborly relations in our immediate environment and call on all our partners to resolve outstanding issues without use of military force or threat of use of military force. Kazakhstan is a staunch practitioner of multi-vector foreign policy, putting priority in developing constructive relations in all directions, east-west, south-north, geographically close and geographically distant. In March 2020, President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev signed a decree on the concept of foreign policy of the Republic of Kazakhstan for a decade of 2020-2030. Those of you in the audience who would like to get a more detailed take of the conceptual approaches of Nur-Sultan can refer to this document. All answers to your potential questions are there. Thank you for your kind attention. Bahut shukriya.
Thank you, Ambassador Bolat Nurgaliev. I will now request Brigadier Rashid Vali Janjua, Acting President of PRI, to kindly share his views on the topic.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Your Excellency, Ambassador Kastofin, Dr. Talad, Ambassador Durrani, Your Excellencies online, distinguished visitors, I got a very warm welcome to all panelists on this very important think tanks conclave, which unites 5 think tanks from Pakistan and Kazakhstan. I think it's a very unique opportunity, and we are indeed lucky to have hosted the inaugural version. And I'm sure this first baby step will go a long way in fostering think tank level cooperation between the two countries. Now, talking of Kazakhstan, before I get down to my written script, I'd like to share my own thoughts on what I observed as a young, not so young officer. I was a brigadier then, 2007. I was heading a delegation from Pakistan to Almaty and Nur Sultan. This was a regional cooperation exercise. So when we speak in the context of foreign policy of Pakistan and of Kazakhstan, and we speak of the multi-vector foreign policy of Kazakhstan, something that I witnessed firsthand as the foreign policy in very torrid times was being unfolded right in front of our eyes. And I was a first-hand witness to how President Nur Sultan negotiated those choppy waters of foreign policy challenges when global power, in fact, that was the only power, and that was in Afghanistan and was trying to extend its influence into Central Asia, was pitted against ex-Soviet Union, from which were begotten these ex-Soviet republics, and they, after getting their independence. So there was a challenge between both of them as to gain influence. And I remember some very far-sighted initiatives of President Nur Sultan, and he very clearly enunciated the foreign policy of Kazakhstan, saying that we will not go beyond this cooperation into economics and security cooperation, so as not to lose our interdependence with the region and also at the global level. So that was an object lesson in foreign policy as to how independent, strong, and statesman-like foreign policy ensures that a country does not get into one orbit or another orbit and charts an independent course. We all know that Kazakhstan is the largest landlocked country, and this is something seeing is beholding. And despite the love and affection of Kazakhstan for most of our people, there have been reasons that most optimal interaction could not take place, and Afghanistan's security situation was one major factor. Kazakhstan is a country with amazing potential. It is the largest uranium exporter of the country. It is the 10th largest oil and gas exporter, and it's a country which has a very strong, solid industrial base and of the ex-Soviet era, and they have made a very good beginning, having pulled out nearly entire country out of the poverty trap. So this is some doing, and their score on Human Development Index is very, very impressive and worth emulating for the rest of the world. Then the literacy rate, 99.8, I was seeing some figures, and that was quite amazing for a country that has come to grips with its Soviet era legacy also, and it had pockets of poverty and underdevelopment, which they have covered very exceptionally, and there are lessons for countries like Pakistan. Now, Kazakhstan's relations within the rubric of bilateral ties as well as the multilateral level at OIC, SEO, ECO are extremely important, especially with regards to the linkages between Central Asia and South Asia. Kazakhstan is part of Eurasian Economic Union. This is something very important, and the mere consideration of statistics like $300 billion was the FDI some years back, and which was coming to Kazakhstan alone, which was more than the entire Central Asia and all countries of Eastern Europe. So that's an eye-opening thing, and which indicates the potential of this country. Pakistan, as has been pointed out, was one of the worst countries that recognized Kazakhstan in 1991. And then it supported Kazakhstan's bid for Security Council membership also, and which was reciprocated by Kazakhstan as well. Pakistan helped Kazakhstan getting membership of WTO as well as CICA along with China. And it was there that the vision of Chinese leadership and the Kazakh leadership, it gelled beautifully to create a interdependent cooperative relationship based upon respect for each other's independence and sovereignty. Xi Jinping's vision of BRI was supported by Kazakhstan, and China, as a chair of CICA, welcomed Kazakhstan as part of that international connectivity, and for which there is a tremendous scope. BRI and CPEC, one of its components, has the potential, and Pakistan can offer a route from CPEC linking through Chinese part into Central Asian states, enabling us to be part of that connectivity and trade and investment bonanza, and enabling Kazakhstan also, which is landlocked, to get another opening into the sea terminus of Gwadar, which is the largest and the most natural deep sea ports. And it has the potential of rivaling Dubai and other big ports. And if this thing is factored in, then I think that landlocked limitation would be greatly offset for Kazakhstan. On the economic front, according to the World Bank, Kazakhstan has a GDP of 180 billion. The economy provides great opportunities for local entrepreneurs as well as the government. The government is actively trying to increase the number of employed people to 4 million compared to 3.3 million, which were some time back, despite the negative impact of pandemic on the global economy. In 2020, Kazakhstan demonstrated the largest increase in net foreign direct investment amongst 17 countries. Within the Belt and Road Initiative, Kazakhstan accounts for about 70% of the strategic traffic passing from China to Europe, being home to over 140 ethnic groups. Kazakhstan has remained unified and has not experienced any conflicts based upon its territorial disputes. So it settled all disputes, and which includes law of Sea Convention on Caspian Sea, which is a very important development on part of littoral countries of Caspian Sea. Despite having a religious diversity, there are 4,000 religious organizations operating freely in this country, but it's an example of pluralism and rule of law. The government has a very effective control over the sociological interplay of dynamics, which sometimes get out of hand and lead to extremism. There are several commonalities that can promote political, diplomatic, and cultural bonds between the two countries. First, there's the political part. We know when Kazakhstan, after dissolution of Soviet Union, became an independent republic, it was confronted with several challenges like political reorientation of the centralized politico-economic system by former President Nur Sultan. The present President Kassym Tokayev has embarked upon a process of political reforms that would promote economic development and human security. In Pakistan also, the process of political consolidation was a challenge initially that was tackled through a series of reforms resulting in better political empowerment of people and a vision of economic prosperity. The present women and youth participation in parliament has touched around 45% in Kazakhstan, which, like Pakistan, was achieved through encouragement of youth and women by reserving quotas in the parliament. Like Kazakhstan, Pakistan has realized that the path to economic security is led through political inclusiveness, economic liberalization, technological development, and equality of opportunity. Now, on foreign policy front, Pakistan and Kazakhstan have several convergences in the shape of a broad vision for regional peace, interdependence, economic security, and human development. It is in sync with our new paradigm of geoeconomics. So instead of leveraging our advantages of strategic location for geopolitical contests, now we are moving away from that resource curse of the African nations and embracing an economic paradigm. And in that, this connectivity, security situation in Afghanistan, Kazakhstan being the largest country of Central Asia, its role is very, very pivotal for us. And we are looking forward with a lot of alacrity over a time horizon of next five to 6 years to create a meaningful difference in our human development indices. Now, there are several areas which specifically need to be highlighted. First is the connectivity part. Pakistan offers an excellent infrastructure because we are part of CPAC and we can connect with a Central Asian, highway of, I should say, industrial and trade prosperity, which has its terminus, as I just mentioned, at Gwadar. So therein lies a great opportunities. And while Pakistan can become a gateway to open sea terminus for Kazakhstan, Kazakhstan in turn can also become a gateway to Pakistan for access to Central Asian and as well as European markets, because you have your own access routes through Caspian Sea and other routes. Then IT sector. We know Kazakhstan desires to be the digital hub for the Central Asia with about 10,000 IT trained experts. Pakistan has already more than 300,000 IT experts with expertise in current and emerging IT products and technologies. With 13 software technology parks, every year more than 20,000 IT graduates and engineers are being produced in Pakistan, coupled with a rising startup culture. Both countries, therefore, can collaborate and benefit from each other in this field. Trade and commerce. This is another very important area where both countries can develop close relationship. Textiles, vegetables, leathers, they have a good chance of being one of the most important products, because at the present you get most from Africa and Europe, but considering 7 to 8 months of winter, I think this is, if the road connectivity improves, it would be cheaper also, and it would be profitable also for both the countries to do trade in this. There are areas like climate security, agricultural research, pharmaceuticals manufacture, in which both countries can cooperate and complement each other's strength, deriving commercial benefits in the process. Defense cooperation. This is another very, very important area in which there's a lot of scope for the two countries to deepen their partnerships. Already some high-level contacts between the two countries have taken place, starting with our Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff who visited in summer. Certain areas have been identified which are the combat readiness training, military training, UN peacekeeping, and training of the special forces. Lastly, one of the most important areas is the people-to-people contacts. Now, this has been a neglected area in which there is a great scope for improvement. We need to encourage greater interaction, not only between the think tanks, but also between universities, between tourist groups, between other cultural organizations which can come together and highlight the commonalities between the two countries. Perhaps a shared and a common Pakistan-Kazakhstan cultural center could be established, starting with a few universities in Kazakhstan and Pakistan. Promotion of tourism cannot take place through media only. We need to do something on ground as far as the ground infrastructure. We need to unclog those processes, visa regimes, and other regulatory issues that inhibit such movements. And I'm sure this is an area in which there is a tremendous scope, and we can start with ensuring and trying that there are direct flights. At the moment, somebody wants to go to Kazakhstan and even on tourism has to take a large tour through Qatar or Dubai. So if there are direct flights, that can usher in a revolution in tourism. Now, this was all I had on these convergences and commonalities. And as I said, that I was a first-hand witness to how the foreign policy of Kazakhstan was unfolding. And on Pakistan's part, Pakistan has always treated Kazakhstan as the most important country, both on for the brotherly affinity, going back to centuries-old heritage. And one of our eminent historians, archaeologists, anthropologists, Dr. A.H. Dani, he did a great research on Central Asia. And he had concluded that the area that now constitutes Pakistan, in fact, was a melting pot. And the people inhabiting this area over a millennia, there were waves and waves, starting with Kushans, Huns, Scythians, Turco-Mongols. So they are melted, and we have 66% of DNA gene pool, which is Central Asian. And it is quite evident in our cuisine preferences, in our cultural preferences, in our faith preferences. So when we have so much commonalities, the foreign policy is just one part of that to fall in place. So with these words, I can conclude my discourse and thank the audience for a patient listening.
Thank you, Brigadier Rashid Ali Janjua. I will now request our audience to kindly bring up their questions. We will accommodate only 2 questions, and after the conclusion of the session, we will be having the MOU signing ceremony between IPRI and FPRI. So over to our audience. Arvind Raza.
Thank you so much for your question. So the short answer is yes. The decision to renounce our nuclear weapons was the right one. And this decision helped us to develop our foreign policy, multivector policy, and it helped us to strengthen our statehood in many terms. So when it comes to the statements from some Russian politicians, I must say that it's just another empty political talks. The final goal is to attract attention of their local people and to gain some political dividends. But in general, it has nothing to do with the official position of the Russian Federation. It was, stated and underlined several times that it's just, statements from political parties, but nothing more. The official position of the Russian Federation was, stated several times by the Minister of Foreign Affairs and by the President of the Russian Federation that they have any conflicts, territorial conflicts, or any, kind of demands from their side to our country. So I believe that, now we have strategic partnership with the Russian Federation. We are members of the Eurasian Economic Union. We were founders, Russia and Kazakhstan, and we're developing our cooperation. So let me give you just one example. As it was mentioned by the previous speakers, the land border between Russia and Kazakhstan is the longest in the world. And the distance is equal to the distance between London and New York. So can you imagine? So it's huge. And what I want to say is that we have no any other option but to develop our friendly relations. And both, leadership of Russia and Kazakhstan understand clearly that if we have any kind of conflicts, it would never ever lead to developing our region. So I'm strongly convinced that again it's just another empty political talks and nothing more. Thank you.
Do we have another question for our co-panelists? Mr. Barat, can you also share your views on the same question?
Excuse me? I have no question. I have a report, the next report.
My apologies. Mr. Balat, did you follow us on the question that was asked?
Here in Nur-Sultan, the question wasn't. We couldn't hear it. At least I couldn't hear it. It was the microphone was maybe off.
Put it in 2014 once that it's a gift. In the backdrop of what happened to Ukraine, despite possessing nuclear weapons in the early 90s, renouncing them, and now the Donbass region is already in the hands of Russian secessionists. So do you regret renouncing, or your leadership regrets renouncing nuclear weapons in the early 90s? Because God forbid if there is a confrontation with Russia down the road in the next decades, you don't have nuclear weapons and you can't rely on the West, as West could save Ukraine as well. Your thought, please.
Ambassador Nurgaliyev, could you please answer the question, sir?
The question is whether we regret the decision to denounce the nuclear weapons. Do I understand it correctly?
Yes, that is the question, sir.
Okay. If we look back into the history, how this decision was taken, we will, I have to note one thing, that from the outset, maybe the interest of the West to Kazakhstan was mainly motivated by the presence of nuclear weapons infrastructure on its territory. Economic interests came later. And we are facing a very stark choice to join the international community as a civilized, predictable member, adhering to the international norms and wanting to establish constructive relations with everybody, or to be a pariah. Well, there was not a single maybe week in Almaty in 92, 93, 94, when we didn't have a high-level delegation from different countries, US, Germany, Japan, France, UK. And the question that was asked continuously was when we are going to join the NPT as the state without not possessing nuclear weapons, when we are going to get rid of the nuclear weapons infrastructure, and how, and this was also put in the, it was depending on that decision, the possibility for large-scale investment and economic cooperation in general would be open. So if Kazakhstan is considered now, 30 years on after gaining independence, as a model of successful social and economic modernization, this is because we made the right choice. I may even say that, for example, we were discussing the security guarantees from the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. The first discussions were in English and about the security, whether what was the words should be security assurances or security guarantees. We are insisting on the security guarantees, but the Americans were saying that guarantees is a too strong modality and assurance is just the right word. Meaning that even at that point, certain limitations were recognized as to under what conditions these obligations or promises can materialize. So Ukrainian case is a special one. For Kazakhstan, this is no regrets, right decision from the beginning, and actually where we are now and what we are now largely is because of the right choice that was made. Thank you.
I would like to add one thing to this. When we see the nuclear policy of Kazakhstan, we must understand the trajectory they took. So this was part of their historical consciousness. They saw a country which was used as a largest nuclear testing site. And because of that, the human development indices were not as developed. So the leadership took a strategic decision that a nuclear country with having all the, nuclear wherewithal could implode internally because of economics. So economics and human development was the focus. And that is why they renounced. And the history has proven them right. Then we also need to highlight that Kazakhstan is one of the countries which is wedded to disarmament. And it's a very strong proponent of non-proliferation. And in fact, one of the disarmament days in I think 2014, it was on the insistence of Kazakhstan that the UN started regarding that day as a disarmament day. And then the low uranium bank that they have created for peaceful nuclear use. And Kazakhstan is playing a very important part in mediating JCPA and that Iran and United States nuclear standoff. It played a positive role in that as well. And for Pakistan, it's quite assurance because there are convergences on NPT issues. And when Pakistan wanted to be a member of a nuclear suppliers group in which, because of the political reasons, some were blocking our entry, Kazakhstan supported us.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. This brings us to the conclusion of our second session. I will now request Acting President IPRI, Brigadier Rashid Wali Janjua, and Ambassador Bolat Nurgaliev from FPRI to kindly join us in the MOU signing ceremony. So over to you, Ambassador Bolat and Acting President IPRI, Brigadier Rashid Wali Janjua. Thank you, Ambassador Bolat Nurgaliev, Ambassador Yerzan Kestafin, and Acting President IPRI, Brigadier Rashid Wali Janjua. This formalizes the beginning of a new chapter between IPRI and FPRI over at Kazakhstan. So on this note, now we begin with our third session, which is Kazakhstan on path of domestic socio-political reforms. For this, I will request now our first speaker from Kazakhstan, Dr. Murat Baumulin, Chief Research Fellow, Kazakhstan Institute of Strategic Studies, to kindly commence with his presentation. And I will also request Lieutenant Colonel Khalid Taimur Akram, Executive Director, CGSS, to also kindly join us on the stage. Over to you, Dr. Murat.
Your Excellencies, dear colleagues, I'd like to thank for this chance to participate in this important event, December 2, in the framework of Pakistani Institute of Strategic Studies. As you heard, my report is dedicated to the Kazakhstan experience or Kazakhstan's path on domestic socio-political reforms. Kazakhstan has been following in its own path of social development that differed a lot from its Central Asian neighbors. It did not opt for total democratization as Kyrgyzstan did, and was not tempted by the autocratic trends typical of Turkmenistan and Karimov's Uzbekistan, where back in '92, the president became the central figure with the parliament and the judicial system pushed aside. Kazakhstan took time to build up its political system, where the president invariably remained the main figure. The first president of Kazakhstan, Sultan Nazarbayev, followed in the country and its development as a whole. His well-balanced foreign policy helped avoid the shocks of economic reforms and political upheavals inside and outside the country, and establish good relationships with its Central Asian neighbors, as well as with Russia, the United States, European Union, and China. It was, and it is nowadays, is well known as the Multivector Policy. For a long time, the first president was consistently consolidating the executive power vertical in order to concentrate it in the hands of president and stabilize the social and economic situation. In recent years, before his escaping from the post of president, Nazarbayev was looking for power transfer formula, so to speak, which, while imitating similar Western procedures, that is, the rotation of power, would allow him to preserve his role in politics. The first president of Kazakhstan did not want to exacerbate political tensions. On March 19, 2019, he stepped down from the post of the head of state, and Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, Speaker of the State Senate, was appointed president. In June 2019, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev won the off-year presidential elections to become the second president of Kazakhstan. The process attracts a lot of attention for the simple reason that the head state is the key figure in the country's political system. However, the fact that Nursultan Nazarbayev stayed away from the elections for the first time in the country's history and suggested Kassym-Jomart Tokayev as a presidential candidate stirred even more interest. Tokayev's advent to power opened a new stage for the country's political development. The desire of first president and his closest circle to remain in power pushed aside the problems of inter-regional relations, the relations between the center and the regions, and the problems of economic developments. But the particularly incomplete transit of power in Kazakhstan presumes that the first president of the republic retains important positions in the power structure and in the process of decision-making. This imposes certain restrictions of the conduct of personal, socio-economic, and foreign policy by the incumbent President Tokayev. Meanwhile, the risk of destabilization, the growing demand for change in society are becoming factors that stipulate policy renovations, primarily in the domestic sphere. The evolution of the political course of Kazakhstan is reflected in measures aimed at liberalizing public life as well as developing programs of economic reforms. In the field of foreign policy, the concept of multivectorness remains the determinant one, in the framework of which signs of strategy in the Russian vector are observed. Following the results of the regular elections to the Majlis in January 2021, the ruling party Nurottan retained its leadership in the lower house of parliament. However, the other two parties which broke the 7% barrier strengthened their position, gaining several new seats. A feature of 2021 elections was that they were held taking into account a certain liberalization. of the country's electoral system. In particular, the constitutional rights of the Majlis, which received the right to approve the new government, were expanded. It is important. The institution of parliamentary opposition was legislated, and a 30% quota for women and youth was introduced. In addition, the ruling party introduced the practice of primaries for the first time. According to its constitution, the Republic of Kazakhstan is a democratic, secular state, ruled by law. People, their beliefs, rights, and freedoms being its highest values. Today, the state pursues a policy that contains no anti or pro-religious intentions. Freedom of conscience and freedom of religion are guaranteed, while propaganda of and agitation for the ideas that may stir up religious or any other hatred are animally banned. The core idea of devolution is that the president hands over his power to the parliament and government. I mean the principal position of first president, Sultan Nazarbayev. One of the institutional reforms includes giving the government additional executive powers in the economic field. So in the political field, the president will still be responsible for main issues in defense, foreign policy, governance, protection of the constitution, and effective work between different branches of government. Hence, it is my conclusion, currently the impact of the devolution of presidential powers on reforms in Kazakhstan is clearly visible, which appears to be a necessity for Kazakhstan's quest for strengthening democracy. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, sir. Now I will request Lieutenant Colonel Khalid Tamur Akram to kindly deliver his presentation and share his views.
Very much. I would like to express my gratitude to the organizers, especially Brigadier Janjua, for getting together all the think tanks from Kazakhstan and Pakistan on their one platform. Indeed, it is quite a unique opportunity for all of us that we are celebrating today the 30th anniversary of the independence of Kazakhstan. So before I move on to my formal speech, I would, since we have all the experts from various think tanks from Kazakhstan and Pakistan over here, so I would like to just apprise you of one of the initiatives which we have taken with the universities of Kazakhstan, is to introduce the subject about Kazakhstan's foreign policy and about Kazakhstan in various universities in Pakistan. So in that, His Excellency the Ambassador we have been requesting him to go to various universities, and I feel quite honored to tell you that Punjab University, which is one of the biggest universities in Pakistan, they have already started in their international relations department a special study cell on Kazakhstan. And similarly, in Bahria University in Islamabad, they have also started a subject in their international relation study course at the BS level about Kazakhstan. Coming over to my written script, I want to give you an overview of the achievements in the last 30 years that Kazakhstan has experienced due to its robust socio-economic political reforms. Over the last 30 years, we have been witnessing great socio-economic and political reforms in Kazakhstan with their multi-vector policy orientation process. Since independence, the authorities and the government in Kazakhstan have pursued integration, the policy of integration, and turning that integration policy for becoming an international economic power. The initial priority was to attract foreign investment into country's oil and gas sector. Kazakhstan's considerable hydrocarbon resources are well known to the world. A more open and competitive and an inclusive economic development policy was adopted, which allowed the effectiveness for the economic progress. We, as the speakers before me have already told, that Kazakhstan is one of the largest economies of the Central Asia. Kazakhstan had established great diplomatic relations with almost every country in the world, and thus transformed into not only the economic power, but also they are one of the great regional political powers now. Kazakhstan has contributed a lot in the CIS states, and also in keeping all the Central Asian states under one umbrella. Kazakhstan aims to become one of the top 30 global economies by 2050. The country has made a great impact and important structural reforms that had allowed the socio-economic development, and also they have worked hard on their political development also. The areas including cultural and social reforms were made during the presidentship of their first president. Under his dynamic leadership, Kazakhstan took many important decisions in introducing new political reforms, legal reforms, civil and judicial reforms in the country, thus aiming at modernizing not only the political system, but also the judicial system. And also in the post-Soviet era, Kazakhstan is one of those countries which has really worked hard to improve on the human rights laws also. We believe that Kazakhstan has strengthened the spirit of nation by laying a solid foundation for development. The country has become an influential member of the global community, and due to its great potential and stability in the society. Recently, the President, His Excellency, has announced a series of significant reforms to strengthen the criminal justice system in Kazakhstan. The political reforms are also accelerated, and special laws have also been made for the protection of women, and to bring Kazakhstan in line with the developed nation. With the agreement of the Parliament of Kazakhstan, tough laws are made on the domestic violence and for all other sexual and other violences. Jail sentences for the people who have been involved in human trafficking have been increased, and Kazakhstan's determination to stamp out the evil of the human trafficking are worth praising. His Excellency, their President, is committed that there will be no slow up in the reforms. There is much to do in the shared ambition, which he shares with the ambition of the first president. And Kazakhstan is on the path of introducing the multi-vector foreign policy to establish good relations with all the regional powers also. Kazakhstan is a very major player in Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and they have been supporting Pakistan's stance in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and also Kazakhstan remained instrumental in last couple of years in supporting Pakistan in various in the United Nations also. In the end, I would like to congratulate the Kazakhstan on this great occasion of the 30th anniversary, and no doubt Kazakhstan is on path of social political reforms that will eventually provide significant benefits to the people of the country. And we hope that Pakistan and Kazakhstan would not only come together on the strategic level, but also the people-to-people contact would be enhanced in times to come. I would also like to request the ambassador and the think tanks over there that the direct flights should be opened, and people-to-people contact can only be enhanced if we have direct flights and we have more student and scholarly exchange programs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Colonel Khalid Taimur Akram. Now, for this session, I will request our audience to kindly share their questions with us. Mr. Mack, please.
Taking cue from what was discussed in the previous session, while so many think tanks have been interacting, it's a conclave which is coming up. Just a far thought, because Kazakhstan has been a wasteland of solid waste and it has done great strides in nuclear security. Do you think the study warrants, because there are more than 5,000 nuclear scientists who went unemployed with the breakup of Soviet Union, and there are reports of toxics proliferation. The recent example of India, where there's a huge toxic was discovered, radioactive material doing rounds in the world, and especially the ensuing instability in Middle East, Libya, and other countries. Do you think Kazakhstan can supplement with its establishment support a study on this very important subject of human security?
Thank you for your question. So let me give you another example. In 1947, the Soviet Union made a decision to construct the Semipalatinsk nuclear testing site, the very year when Pakistan was created as an independent state. So for next 40 years in Kazakhstan, they had so far 456 nuclear explosions. It means that almost every month, I mean on monthly basis, we had one nuclear explosion. So this led to a tragical consequences. It was a disaster for this region, for the people of this region, and I believe that still now we are trying to, recover from this harm. So it was one of the reasons why we decided to renounce our nuclear weapons. So when it comes to these studies, international studies, I believe, of course, Kazakhstan can contribute greatly. And as you might know, our first president initiated this world anti-nuclear movement. From the very beginning, we were against any nuclear weapons, any nuclear, testing sites, because again, Kazakhstan probably, as no one else knows, the negative, tragical consequences of such experiments. So again, we can join our hands and we can work together. And we believe that, and our president, our first president, our incumbent president, all of them are, firmly convinced that we should work hard in order to convince the international community on the tragic outcomes of the testings, experiments with nuclear weapons, and it will lead nowhere. Moreover, it will lead to another tragedy, and probably this tragedy will, influence not only kind of some certain part of the world, but it will be a negative consequences for the whole world. So that's the reason why we believe that this world anti-nuclear movement is very important, and we will be, doing our utmost in terms of developing this movement and trying to convince our friends and partners across the world to, in this term. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. So now I have a question for Dr. Murad and also for Lieutenant Colonel Khalid Taimur. In Kazakhstan's case, we've seen that right at the outset of their independence, they've set themselves out on a path of reforms. Similarly, in Pakistan's case, though, we had our moment of our independence back in 1947, but we've seen that path towards reforms has been quite intermittent. What could, in your experience, Pakistan could do to emulate the Kazakh experience in terms of setting out its own struggle and its own path towards reforms. And Dr. Murat, what do you think the two sides can do at the foreign policy or at bilateral relations level in order to share their experiences towards that end? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, we have been seeing the reforms in Kazakhstan ever since they got independence. The good part of those reforms were the continuity. They had continuity in those reforms, and in the post-Soviet era, they only had the one aim, is to stand up on their own feet and become an economic giant, and luckily they had resolved all their issues. They had no border issues. They have no other political issues with any of the countries surrounding them. But in case of Pakistan, I would say that we have also made considerable reforms in last 72 years. We have not lagged behind in anything. We are a nuclear power, and we have a huge population of 220 million. But yes, there are, in many factors, on many sectors, the reforms are still needed and they are happening. And as far as the foreign policy of Kazakhstan, and since we have got so many of our disputes like Kashmir dispute and other disputes that we have to account for, so the Kazakhstan situation cannot be ideally compared with the situation of Pakistan. But as far as the foreign policy is concerned, yes, the Kazakh foreign policy remained very neutral, and Pakistan's foreign policy and Kazakh foreign policy has got a lot of common agenda, a lot of common points as far as on the nuclear issues are concerned, on the other diplomatic issues. We have been very closely working on the platform of SCO, even in the United Nations. So the foreign policy of the Kazakhstan and Pakistan is aligned on many fronts. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Murat Laumulin. So would you also share your views on the same question?
You may not have heard.
Were you able to follow the question, sir? I think he's having a bad connection. All right. All right, so now we will move on with our fourth session, which is Economic Development of Kazakhstan, Outcomes and Competitiveness. I will now request our Kazakh speaker, Mr. Bayzan Ghazin Khwanish, who is Director of the Center for Macroeconomic Research and Forecasting, to kindly commence with his presentation. And I will also request Mr. Raja Rafiullah, Research Fellow at PAI, to kindly join us on the stage.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad to be here, and it's an honor for me to be here and to share some ideas and messages about the session. First of all, I just want to introduce some issues which are faced Kazakhstan in the current year, and let me get acquainted you with the latest economic developments of our country and the forecasts and plans of the government. I think it's very important right now in this hard situation. So as you may know, last year, COVID-19 global pandemic affected our economy and then our economic growth as well. So for the first time in more than 20 years, the GDP growth was registered at the negative level. However, the substantial government anti-crisis package, which was amounted about $15 billion or 9% of GDP, prevented deep fall down in economic growth and stopped it level at the level of minus 2.5%. This year, economy of Kazakhstan is rapidly recovering and its growth has already amounted 3.5%. This was due to the growth in real sector, which was 2.9%, and the sector of the service sector was the activity was at the level of 3.4%. The government stimulus packages and the pace of economic recovery in Kazakhstan are positively assessed by the international financial organizations. For example, in August and in September of this year, the international credit ratings like Moody's and Standard & Poor's have confirmed the sovereign credit rating of Kazakhstan at the level of investment reliability. So regarding to the first growth forecast, in general, by the end of 2021, we expect the economy will grow in the range of 3.7 and 4%. Positive dynamics of Kazakhstan economic growth is expected to strengthen in 2022. The real GDP growth is projected at 3.9%. It's the non-resource sector. We know that the Kazakhstan economy is heavily based on resources, but we think that the non-resource sector will become one of the main drivers of qualitative growth and will continue to be a key factor of sustainable economic recovery. For example, we rely on manufacturing growth that will continue outpacing the mining sectors. Next year, we expect that the recovery of consumer and business activity will contribute to a further increase in their indicators. So, in the last year, there was a heavy situation on the employment status of the Kazakhstan people, but no matter the unemployment rate in 2020 was not exceeded the 5% level. So it is, I think, that one of the good measures. So what about the initiatives to ensure the strong and sustainable economic growth of the next year? So in medium term, we expect that the government will be driven by the several key drivers. For example, first is development of non-energy sector and export of non-energy goods. One of the part of the further development plan is the manufacturing industry. It will continue stimulating and expanding range of manufacturing goods. The government will work on deepening the level of their processing and further integrating the regional and global value chain. There is a huge program of industrialization of Kazakhstan is working, and there is a new wave of this program. Government will work on the transfer and adopt Industry 4.0 technologies in manufacturing processes and in everyday life of Kazakhstan people. It will develop the domestic scientific and technological and innovation base as well. So we expect that by 2025, technological modularization will contribute to an increase of labor productivity by 25%, and the production of reduction of production costs by 20%, and labor costs by 30% as well. So now Kazakhstan government is launching a new investment cycle. We have switched of working directly with each investor at every stage of the value chain. There is a 3-level of investment attraction system has been developed and now is working within the framework of 5-year country investment program. Now there is a conception of investment policy of Kazakhstan is developed, and the rating of investment activities in the regions of Kazakhstan was also developed, so that each region will compete with other regions in order to attract investments. As a result of this implementation of this huge plans and measures, by 2025, we expect that the volume of investments and fixed assets will brought to the 30% of GDP, and develop of foreign direct investments will up to 30 billion for each year. So now one of the key measures also is taking is integrated development of entrepreneurship. in general, our goal is to increase the share of SMEs in GDP to 35% by 2025. Now it's currently 32%. To reach this aim, government plans to implement new agenda of development of entrepreneurship. It will provide for new regulatory policy from scratch. Let's say it is one of the key measures is reducing the burden on business, ensuring the healthy competitive environment, and increase the entrepreneurial activity in the manufacturing sector. So this is what about the key messages, key measures which will be taken in the 5-year horizon, but we also know that there is a biggest structural risks to the economy of Kazakhstan, and our government is also taking some steps on mitigating this kind of risks. For example, in the long term, increasing the pace of and stability of economic growth in Kazakhstan will require greater economic diversity. The current development model, let's say, based on extraction of and export of natural resources, will not be sustainable in a transitioning to the global low carbon economy. So new sources of growth and job creation from private sector will largely depend on the pace of structural reforms, and we of course clearly understand that. Now we are activating the reforms through the formulation of 10 national projects. National projects are aimed to support the agriculture, non-carbon sectors, promoting entrepreneurship, and expanding access to the social services. I think that this kind of national projects will support this kind of transition of economy. We also know, we can understand that the role of the state in the economy remains significant due to the targeted sectoral interventions, but also in this regard, the rationale for state-owned enterprise will be reviewed, of course, and the risk management, corporate governance, and transparency in this state-owned enterprises will be strengthened. In addition, the recent creation and independent competition agency should support reduce barriers to the market access and trade and investment to other private sector companies. We also understand that in the face of global transition to the new energy sources and to the, let's say, the global transition to the net zero emission, the climate change is one of the key aspects of in front of the government. Advanced policy planning will be key in terms of managing the medium and long-term impacts of climate change. Recently, we are working on a doctrine or strategy of net zero emission in Kazakhstan. We also understand that the raising of carbon tariffs, including significant energy subsidies, will allow for linking between different initiative measures to meet emission reduction targets of Kazakhstan. We are working on a gasification. Kazakhstan will work on the gasification of the country in order to reduce the CO2 emissions from the coal usage in the electrification of Kazakhstan. So, however, we understand that such reforms need to be implemented gradually, so that the necessary social safety nets can be created to mitigate the impact on vulnerable population, while allowing private sector to undertake its own structural transformation. I think that it's all from my side. So if you have some questions, I'll be glad to answer and discuss. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Faizan Gazin. Now I will request Mr. Raja Rafiullah from PI to kindly share his views on the subject.
Your Excellency, Ambassador of Kazakhstan, honorable speakers, participants, and members of the audience, ladies and gentlemen, it is my absolute privilege to be here representing But I just wanted to use a few graphs to illustrate the progress that Kazakhstan has made over the years and how that has translated into human development. So hopefully this will help us to set up our discussion. And I just was trying to see if this works. Yep. Finally, technology is a lifesaver. Continuing with the theme of the session, which is economic development of Kazakhstan, these are just two basic points that I wanted to make to set up this discussion. So within a relatively short span of 3 decades, since independence, Kazakhstan has taken huge strides from an economic development standpoint. The economic trajectory of Kazakhstan should definitely serve as a blueprint for other regional countries such as Pakistan. The economic growth has also translated in human development because many a times we economists have this preoccupation with increasing income and per capita income without realizing the real goal is for that income growth to be translated into human development. And that has happened in Kazakhstan. In 2019, the country was placed 51st worldwide when it comes to ACI index. This, I feel, has also gone up. Probably, I think one of the speakers mentioned that recently in the current rankings, Kazakhstan has become the top, has reached top 50 category. So that in itself is a huge achievement for the country. So I just wanted to show a few basic graphs which will depict a few very basic economic indicators to set up our discussion and represent and depict the progress that has been made thus far. I, by in no means, I'm posing to be an expert on the Kazakhstan economy. You know, our friends who are speakers from Kazakhstan here, and they know much more than me. But if you look at the trajectory, there were a few hiccups in the first few years, but the GDP has consistently grown over time in Kazakhstan over the past 2 decades and more, which in itself is a testament to the great work that's being done on an economic front. If you look at the GDP per capita, you will see that that has also increased exponentially. So that's an exponential increase, really impressive. It reached a high point of around $14,000 and currently stands at around $9,000, which puts the country in the category of upper middle income countries. Again, amazing. If you look at the percentage unemployment as a percentage of total labor force, you will see that the unemployment has gone down over the past 2 decades, almost a 3-fold decrease. And the most amazing thing is that even despite the COVID pandemic and whatever, and the effect it had on the economy and people getting out of going out of jobs and so forth, Kazakhstan's unemployment rate has not gone above 5%. Again, tremendous job, and I think that is because of the great work that has the government has done, the steps they have taken in response to the pandemic. I'll briefly come towards that in a bit too, about discussing about the pandemic and its effects. If this is a very interesting graph, if you look at this graph, this is percentage investment in as a percentage investment in the economy as a percentage of nominal GDP. And you will see that it has grown over time. I know it's a cyclical graph, but you see, if you closely notice, it is on a long-term upward trajectory. But having said that, so investment is really important in an economy because it helps. Labor force is important, but we economists also think that production capacity, increasing the GDP, is a combination of both labor force, human capital, which is human capital, and also investment, because that leads to capital formation. So you will see that it is on an upward trajectory in the long term, but it is cyclical. Having said that, so I don't want to be the devil's advocate, but there are a few challenges, and these were covered pretty nicely, quite eloquently with the speaker who came before me. If you look at it, you will see that, like the rest of the world, Kazakhstan was affected because of the COVID pandemic. But now the economy is bouncing back quite strongly because of the swift response of the government. There is also an increasing willingness of the government, because when we looked at that last graph, we saw a cyclical pattern. And that cyclical pattern is because at times you can see that there is a dependence of the economy on the extractive sector. But the government is now slowly, as the speaker before me also mentioned, bringing in structural reforms to spur economic growth through non-extractive sectors. So this is really important. Diversification is important because it will help foster vibrant economic activities across a range of sectors and spurs high sustained economic growth. Having said that, there are endless opportunities for a country that is geopolitically situated like Kazakhstan. It has links with large, fast-growing markets in China, South Asia, and with those of Russia and Western Europe. Work is already being done, but I feel there is further immense potential for regional collaboration, trade, and mutual growth for all countries, including Kazakhstan and Pakistan. State-level interactions are really important, but what we as economists feel that what's really also important is to foster private industry linkages, economic interactions, and exchange of ideas, such as we are having in this roundtable. This will result in creating more vibrant competitive markets and in both countries drive economic and social growth. This is about it. I would like to thank you all. I will also like to thank the ambassador for his kind invitation. We at PIDE would like to continue our cordial and respectful relationship with the Embassy of Kazakhstan in Pakistan, the Republic of Kazakhstan, and most importantly, the people of Kazakhstan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Rafiullah. Now I will open up the floor for question and answer sessions. Any questions for our speakers, please?
Let's have it from this side.
Thank you so much for your presentation and everyone's comments so far. My question is specific to the presentation that you just gave. You had spoken a little bit about the diversification that is needed across all sectors. Can you pinpoint a couple of sectors that perhaps Kazakhstan and Pakistan should be looking at?
This is working right. Yeah. I think I would like to answer it in a very diplomatic way, because I personally feel like the best person to answer this question would be somebody who is an expert in the economy of Kazakhstan and the speaker before me. But if you look at it, I think, for instance, these days there is a lot of, so we are going through this technological growth, right? And particularly when it comes to, and the COVID pandemic has also fundamentally changed how we engage in the workplace. Interestingly, I think maybe I should not say this, but I have a friend. He recently was in Kazakhstan's capital, and he was representing Pakistan's IT industry in Kazakhstan. And I feel that the important thing is for rather than first going and saying which sectors to invest in, to foster exchange of ideas and have people collaborate beyond state interaction. State level interactions are really important, but if you let people from the private sector, people from the academia go and exchange ideas from each other, those things trickle down eventually. It takes time, but those things trickle down into the economy and they then permeate through range of different sectors. And I feel that is really important in itself. And ultimately that then leads to economic growth, because ideas, we talk about money, we talk about GDP, but at the end of the day, ideas and those ideas translating into policy are basically the real drivers of growth.
Thank you, Mr. Rafiullah. I will now request Ambassador Durrani to kindly put up his question. Akmal, can we please bring the mic?
Thank you very much. My question with the panelists, worthy panelists, especially our Kazakh panelists, would be that what is the role of private sector in Kazakhstan's economy? Because whatever governments may do, we have seen that if there are government monopolies, then economies do not perform well as compared to the private sector. So I would like to be enlightened on that count, because depending on the role of the private sector, then we can talk about growth of economic relations and trade relations between Pakistan and Kazakhstan, and especially which are those fields which are available for bilateral investments, which are available for trade. Thank you.
Sir. Mr. Kwanish, can we have your views on the question, please?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much for your question. As I said, one of the main goals of Kazakhstan is developing of entrepreneurship, and our goal is to reach 35% by 2025, and it's the huge aim, which will be developed through the national programs. Yeah, I can understand that there is a big role of state-owned enterprises in Kazakhstan. Moreover, there is a quasi organizations which are somehow linked to the government structures, but the thing is that as I said, the rationale for the state-owned enterprise will be reviewed in terms of risk management, corporate and government transparency, because in some sectors, for example, there is now, in the current state of development, there is huge problems in introducing the private sector in some sectors, for example, in transport, in energy sectors, and etc. So what will the government do is the review of risk management of those sectors, corporate governance and transparency. The transparency of this state-owned enterprise will be strengthened. In addition, as I said, there is an agency which will be which was currently created, the Independent Competition Agency, which should work on reducing the barriers to market access and trade and investment from the private sector side. So I think that those kind of steps will help to ease the situation with the state-owned enterprises. The government will, of course, now there is implementing some steps on privatization. All state-owned enterprises or quasi-organizations should put into the privatization process of all their function, which are not mainly linked to their own main function. For example, let's say that there is a if it is not the main function all functions should be sent to the market access. So the private sector should compete in order to get those strategic assets and use this as strategic assets in order to work on this sector. So I think that those kind of steps should help to ease the situation with the state-owned enterprises and increase the transparency. Thank you very much.
Sure, Ambassador, if you may go ahead.
So when it comes to cooperation between Kazakhstan and Pakistan, as for now, for example, I see at least 4 areas for developing our cooperation. It's IT sector, agriculture, textile, and pharmaceutical industry. But again, when it comes to cooperation between Kazakhstan and Pakistan, I must say that we should not consider each other as a kind of final point of destination. We can serve each other as regional hubs and golden gates. As it was mentioned several times that Kazakhstan is the largest landlocked country in the world. And for us, Pakistan can serve as a golden gate in terms of getting access to the warm waters, to the World Sea, and it will be the shortest route. And vice versa, Kazakhstan can serve as a regional hub in terms of getting access to the Eurasian Economic Union, to the European Union markets, and to the Central Asian markets as well. So this is why I believe that there is a great potential to develop. Again, we need to fill the gap. Our people know little about each other. Our people know little about business opportunities and investment climate. As I mentioned previously, we organized a business forum 1 week ago. About 35 businessmen from Pakistan came to Kazakhstan for the first time. And it was kind of eye-opener for these people. They went to the markets, they went to the shopping malls, they had talks with their counterparts in Kazakhstan. And finally, I can tell you that one of the agricultural companies is thinking of establishing a warehouse in the southern part of our country. Another company, manufacturer of surgical instruments, they are considering of establishing JV with our Kazakh company. Another example, about 2 weeks ago, we organized online negotiations between the Ministry of Industry and Optima, All Pakistani Textile and Mills Association. So now, after these talks, I had a conversation with the president of Optima. They are planning to send a delegation to Kazakhstan. So the very first step is to establish a dialogue. We should establish hold as many events as we can. And that is why I mentioned that we should hold such kind of events, B2B, cultural, people-to-people, our respected think tanks on regular basis. So only through this way, we can develop and strengthen our cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Yerzhan Kistafin, and also to our co-panelists, Mr. Rafiullah and Mr. Kwanyesh. Now, this brings us to our final and 5th session, which is Kazakhstan-Pakistan interaction in quest for collaboration. We have from Kazakhstan's Institute of World Economics and Politics, Ms. Lydia Parkomachik, who will be presenting her views on the topic and provide a Kazakh perspective on the subject. Over to you, Ms. Parkomchik.
Thank you so much. Well, dear colleagues, I'm glad to join today's outstanding event. Well, unfortunately, due to objective reason, our director could not manage to take part in the conference, but on his behalf and on behalf of the Institute of World Economics and Politics and the Nursultan Nazarbayev Foundation, let me extend our best wishes to all the participants. Well, and I also would like to thank the organizers for opportunity to speak to the important issue of Kazakhstani-Pakistani relations. Well, you know that on December 20 in 1991, Pakistan became one of the first states in the world to recognize the independence of Kazakhstan. And you know that over the past years, our countries could establish both diplomatic and strong friendly relations based on the mutual respect, trust, and understanding. Well, it's obvious that heads of our state played a major role in deepening our bilateral relations. Well, despite the fact that our founding fathers, funny part of Kazakhstan and Pakistan, Nursultan Nazarbayev and Muhammad Ali Jinnah lived in different period of times, but they had something in common. They both love their people and the countries. So this year marks 30th anniversary of Kazakhstan independence. And from this perspective, I would like to point main milestones in development of our country, and according to the topic also share thoughts on development of Kazakhstan-Pakistani relations. Well, you know that at the very beginning of independence, Kazakhstan faced deep recession and economic decline. And this you can easily see from the graphs that previous speakers showed you above. Well, in 2082, there was a hyperinflation. And GDP in the period from 1992 to 1995 dropped by more than 30%, and about 1.6 million jobs were eliminated. However, situation was able to change in some times. In order to overcome economic difficulties, dealing with the issue, of course, of territorial integrity and establishing trustful relations with all regional neighbors like Russia and China, Kazakhstan has to revive its own statehood once again. During the first years of independence, our first president created key state and political institutions on democratic basis. And as of today, Kazakhstan has resolved all border issues with neighbors, launching the process of demarcation and demilitarization. Well, you know, in fact, we also mentioned it above. In 2018, Caspian State Summit, where the Convention on the Legal Status of the Sea was signed, helped to resolve the issue of maritime borders. Well, in early 90s, the first president who chose a new political course for new Kazakhstan. Well, first of all, our country has decided its nuclear future. All decisions that were made started from the decision and to the decree on closing the St. nuclear test site that was signed back in August 29 in 1991. Well, it was Kazakhstan's decisive step toward its real sovereignty and independence. And Kazakhstan, through its anti-nuclear experience, has demonstrated to the whole world the power of openness in its nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation. Well, Kazakhstan voluntarily announced the world's first largest nuclear potential inherited from the Soviet past. And our country, in fact, was the first country in the history to voluntarily refuse to join nuclear club. Well, joint anti-nuclear movement was the only possible solution to ensure the security of our population and create ground for economic development. As you know, nowadays Kazakhstan has become leading economy among countries of Central Asia and even in CIS region. Well, according to UNDP Human Development Index, Kazakhstan was ranked 51st out of 189 countries in 2020, well, ahead of all former USSR countries and both including Russia. Well, among the Central Asian states, Kazakhstan leads the Global Prosperity Index. Well, in 2020, Kazakhstan took 7th position in the Index of Education Development, according to UNESCO. Well, you know this principle, economy first, politics second. This is principle that Nursultan Nazarbayev was guided by during the whole period of Kazakhstan's independence, and which becomes the basis for the state economic policy. Well, the natural currency of Kazakhstan, as you probably heard, was introduced back in 1993, and large privatization programs generated new budget revenues. During the period of high oil prices, which you also we talked about it before, you know, from 2000 and 2007, Kazakhstan's GDP experienced rapid growth, almost 10% per year on average. And in 2000, Kazakhstan has become one of the first countries of the CIS region to receive the status of market economy. If we compare what we have at the beginning of independence and what we have now, we can see significant progress. Kazakhstan's GDP grew by 32 times from 5.1 billion back in 1993 to 165 billion in 2020. GDP per capita grew by 28 times. And Kazakhstan has successfully passed the test of financial crisis in 2008 and has a strong position and its economic grounds to pass the current crisis caused by pandemic. We should admit that Kazakhstan continued to follow a foreign policy of multi-vector diplomacy. Well, nowadays, Kazakhstan is a member of over 70 international organizations, among them like United Nations, OSCE, IMF, SCO, and so on and so forth. Being at the crossroads between Europe and Asia, for Kazakhstan, its membership in Organization of Security Cooperation in Europe was one of the important areas of cooperation for and with Western countries. You know that we joined OSCE back in 1992, and back in 2010, Kazakhstan became the chairman of the organization. And for the first time after 11-year break, the capital of Kazakhstan provided a place for the OSCE summit where the Astana Declaration was adopted. You know that in 2017, Kazakhstan became the first state in Central Asia to be elected to the United Nations Security Council as a non-permanent member. Well, actually, we should admit that the role of Pakistan in this process was important. In 2016, Pakistan supported Kazakhstan's candidacy to the UN Security Council. And you know that in 2011, Kazakhstan provided similar support for Pakistan. Well, in addition, Pakistan supported the granting of Kazakhstan membership in Asia-Europe Forum in the World Trade Organization. You know that Kazakhstan also initiated of establishing international organizations like Commonwealth of Independent States, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SICA, Turkish Council, and so on and so forth, including Eurasian Economic Union. Well, and all these organizations continue to play ensure security and development all among the region. Well, the idea of establishing conference of interaction and confidence building measures in Asia was firstly announced by our first president within the framework of 47th session of the United Nations General Assembly. And today, if we could count, members of organization account for 90% of territory of all Asia. And you probably can be assured that Kazakhstan continues to play a distinguished role as a mediator and resolving international conflicts. We should mention, first of all, its Astana process on Syria, launched in 2017. Another important case was Almaty negotiation on the Iranian nuclear issue, which actually really helped to and created the basis for signing joint comprehensive action plan for Iran. We hope this will be resumed in near future. Well, Kazakhstan continues its initiative in the field of international mediation, everything and under the guidance of the first president of Kazakhstan. Well, as we start to focus on the relations and prospects of cooperation between Kazakhstan and Pakistan, we know that our relations between countries are developing on various levels, including mutual visits of our leaders. Well, we know that the first president of Kazakhstan visited Pakistan in 1992 and 2003. And in 2017, President of Pakistan took part in the first summit of Organization of Islamic Cooperation on Science and Technology, which was held in Astana, and also took part on the closing ceremony of International Specialized Exhibition. You probably heard and know that it was called Astana Expo 2017. Well, according to our economic cooperation, the main mechanism is still Kazakh-Pakistan Intercapital Commission on trade, economy, scientific, technical, and cultural cooperation. We also try to actually develop our military cooperation in the sphere of military education, trainings, technical cooperation, and so on and so forth. We also try to, continue and carry out our cooperation within the framework of international organizations like United Nations, SIPA, SCO, and so on and so forth. Well, as you probably know, my institution, IWEB, as being a think tank that represents Kazakhstan as in SCO forum, was delighted to see and joining Pakistan as a member of SCO scientific activity. Well, I believe that there is a strong need to deeply analyze the relation between our two countries, well, especially in the expert level. We need to take into account the context of mutual synergy of the updated economic policy, taking into account interest of our closest neighbors for us, it's Russia and China, for Pakistan, especially China, how we could deal our economy perspective in Central Asia or maybe even in the Caspian region. You know that our institute, together with the Sultan Nazarbayev Foundation, is organizer of Astana Club, which is a platform for open dialogue on Great Eurasia. And Astana Club members are really world-famous experts and heads of state and government. And we are glad that Mr. Shafkat Aziz, the former Prime Minister of Pakistan, was also among the members of the club for the first 5 years. In fact, we would be glad to further cooperation in the framework of joint events, preparation of analytical research and experience, exchange its experience and thoughts on current issues. This is especially needed during the period of post-COVID recovery. You know that during the at least 1 year, our foreign trade tries to increase, even despite the COVID pandemic, but still we have large space to work on our economic cooperation. You probably remember that in April 2020, Pakistan made a decision to provide humanitarian assistance to Kazakhstan in order to stop the spread of coronavirus. But there is still a great field of potential to expand our cooperation in many areas. So we should continue our discussion on the topic, especially on an expert level, even further. Well, thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Parkomchip. I will now request Dr. Tanveer Khalid, Honorary Secretary, Pakistan Institute of International Affairs, for her presentation.
Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. I'm extremely thankful to the Kazakhstan Embassy in Pakistan and the Islamabad Policy Research Institute for providing me the opportunity to speak on this auspicious occasion of 30 years of independence of Kazakhstan. We understand that any bilateral relation depends upon a legendary, at the same time, a visionary leadership and common policies and approaches with mutual interest of the partnership states. In the case of Pakistan and Kazakhstan, an analysis of this aspect is important for all future collaboration and cooperation. We have begun or initiated our bilateral relations for almost 3 decades now, but there have been commonalities, but though considering the vast potential, the policy approaches and the focus can be further extended. And for this, I believe that we must understand and analyze the aspirations of the Republic of Kazakhstan, their efforts and endeavors in diplomatic, political, economic, and national fields, so that we can have a better and more intensive interaction in the future. So I believe that the certain potential remains untapped. To understand the aspirations of the Kazakhstan leadership, we must see what is their vision. Kazakhstan government advocates a distinct view of its identity as a state in Europe, stressing its sovereignty and independence, and at the same time incorporating the notion of cultural ties with Europe, the West, the Commonwealth of Independent States, and its regional neighbors by promoting multi-ethnicity, tolerance, and religious understanding. Promotion of such social cohesion is a clearly articulated goal of the Kazakh government, where intended audiences are as much external as internal. Former President Nursultan Nazarbayev's program in 2017 of modernization of national identity was to help the nation connect with its roots as well as adapt and succeed in the modern world by introducing the wider world to the cultural richness of modern Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan has also asserted its sovereignty and independence from dependence on major powers, from independence from major powers like China, the United States, Russia, and as well as international bodies where representation is important, like the United Nations, NATO, and the EU, by positive foreign policy. That its survival at times has been endangered or it has been under pressure, it has always engaged in regional and international cooperation to protect its sovereignty and demonstrate its value as an independent state. International. President Nazarbayev defended regional economic ties by proactive diplomacy and a balanced approach in bilateral partnership in concerns and international security. Pakistan was among the first countries to recognize Kazakhstan when it became independent after December 1991, and diplomatic relations were established after the visit of the Kazakh president, Nursultan Nazarbayev. Since then, many high-level interactions have taken place between the two countries, and formal relations have initiated with the signing of many MOUs since 1992, but more high-level cooperation is needed for furthering prospects to enhance and qualitatively elevate relations to new levels of future collaboration. Pakistan has always been one of the main partners of Kazakhstan in South Asia, whose role and significance for the world is well known and undisputable. With successful economic development, Kazakhstan has put for itself the ambitious goal of joining the group of 30 most developed economies of the world by 2050. Pakistan can gain enormously from this perspective because people in South Asia have been linked to Central Asia for centuries by many historical, cultural, trade, and economic relations. And these bonds of friendship and invaluable heritage can be effectively preserved for mutual benefit. To discuss avenues of advanced cooperation between Pakistan and Kazakhstan for deepening bilateral ties, significant areas should be outlined, which will further set measures for avenues resultingly by such contact. Cooperation in energy sector, science, information technology, defense, and security and trade should be considered on priority basis for a deepening understanding by both countries, keeping in view regional connectivity and people-to-people contact. Because of Kazakhstan's oil and gas resources, its importance and international prestige has increased. The Central Asia oil pipeline sends oil from Kazakhstan through Turkmenistan and Afghanistan to Pakistan's Arabian Sea port of Gwadar. Pakistani ports offer the shortest route to Kazakhstan for access to the Arabian Sea, and even its land routes stand outstanding, which can be beneficial for both countries. Preferential trade agreements with high investment volumes must be signed. For this, regional connectivity through land and sea routes are needed. Karakoram Highway has greatly expanded, which has a commercial and strategic significance. Infrastructure needed has been greatly improved by China's Silk Road initiative. Hence, a follow-up on the benefits should not be slow. CIS countries and Pakistan can gain much more from CPEC connectivity. Kazakhstan, being a landlocked country, can gain by air, land, and sea routes to and through Pakistan from economic point of view. Air links should be further established, promoting ecotourism and businesses. Kazakhstan's contribution towards peace and security is highly recognized, together with its diplomatic role in hosting peace talks. It is also a global advocate of arms control and nuclear non-proliferation. Pakistan has the same focus, and both countries can mutually share their interests and approaches and learn from each other with this viewpoint to jointly promote civil nuclear cooperation and renewable energy prospects. Pakistan and Kazakhstan have similar approaches towards international issues, and main principles of their foreign policies are proactive, balanced, and a pragmatic approach through dialogue, compromise, and mutual partnerships. Their regional interest for peace, security, and economic development should be reflected more in regional issues of global concerns, as well as in international and regional organizations. This will not only change the status of our two countries, but also promote interstate cooperation in the United Nations, the OIC, the SCO, the ECO, and CICA. Effective suggestions for peace in the region by a comprehensive and pragmatic approach to the Afghanistan issue should be proposed and supported mutually. Exports and imports between the two countries should further increase. Liberal trade policies can have better prospects for export products in big markets. Kazakhstan can export energy resources, electricity, metallurgical complex products, agricultural products, and import textile, leather products, medical equipment, and pharmaceuticals. Kazakhstan will have a very competitive market for agricultural products from Pakistan, particularly vegetables and citrus fruit for its long winter. Furthering people-to-people contact can be by tourism, when people can get acquainted with the history and culture of each other, and such awareness can lead to developing interests and opening of new vistas of engagement. Annual exhibitions like that of Expo 2017 in Nur Sultan with the theme of future energy should be held, easing participation, information, and interaction. To increase bilateral cooperation, the fields of health, education, and research should be given more importance. An exchange of doctors, paramedics, researchers, and teachers should be organized so that learning from each other's experience can give impetus to the needed platforms, while institutional research for future collaborative fields can be identified as preferred sectors. Military defense sphere should also be considered with increased focus and military education, training of special forces, and military technical cooperation should be given credence. Delegations from both countries should visit defense exhibitions for the know-how and purchase in arms industry and dissemination of new military and information technologies. Terrorism, militancy, and extremism have turned out to be a perpetual threat to all members of the international community, and collaboration in countering terrorism is much needed. Pakistan, being a victim of terrorism and having successfully faced the challenges, has offered to assist in counter-terrorism efforts, and joint exercises between Pakistan and Kazakhstan have been conducted. Sharing experience and know-how should continue in this field, which is not only necessary for regional security, but for regional peace as well. And there are still untapped opportunities for expanding ties. Bilateral partnership is the only way to achieve success in the fight against global challenges, not only terrorism, but WMDs, climate change, and environmental degradation. And periodic conferences should be convened to benefit from the knowledge of concerned experts for a way forward. Bilateral relations between Pakistan and Kazakhstan is a befitting partnership where both can learn from each other and attain international goals of literacy, eradication of poverty, economic prosperity, and promotion of democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Dr. Tanveer Khalid, for a comprehensive, insightful presentation. And before we move to our concluding remarks, I would like to request our audience if they have any questions for the panel. All right, in that case, we will now move towards our concluding remarks. I will now request Ambassador Yerzhan Kistafin, Kazakhstan's ambassador to Pakistan, to kindly share his concluding thoughts.
Thank you. So I would like to thank all the speakers, all the participants of today's event. I believe it was a very important one. The very first event of such a kind with participation of leading top think tanks of two countries. This is the very first event, and I hope that next year we will be organizing our roundtables, webinars, online, hopefully offline as well. And we will be inviting our experts to contribute to strengthening our cooperation. All the credits goes to the brilliant team of EPRI, and with their support, we were succeeding. We were able to organize this very important event. Once again, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I may now also request His Excellency Ambassador Sajjad Ahmed Sihar to also share his concluding thoughts. So over to you, sir.
Please confirm if he's still there.
Ambassador Sajjad, I hope you are still connected with us.
And he is not in another meeting.
In case of this situation, we will now move to the final speaker who will share his concluding remarks, and that is Acting President EPRI, Brigadier Rashid Wali Janjua. Brigadier Rashid Wali Janjua, may we have you, sir?
Thank you very much. In the end, I think I need to thank Mr. Kistafin and his team and the heads of all the 5 think tanks that participated in this conclave. This is a very important seminal event, and I think we can follow it up by more face-to-face interactions, because the post-COVID world is enabling us to move on, and I'm sure we can be the precursors to new dawn of tourism, economic cooperation, and cooperation in all those aspects that we talked about. So my request would be that we should not just rest at this laurel, but we must make concrete efforts to follow through on what we achieved today on this. And as I said, the possibility of exchange of scholars, and we can have delegations going from respective think tanks to Kazakhstan, and from Kazakhstan coming here and enlightening us about our research endeavors and other aspects. So before I finally ask for the vote of thanks, there's for the benefit of the audience, I think one important takeaway should be the right pronunciation of Kazakhstan. When I was in Kazakhstan, we in Urdu, which is a Turkish derivative, our language, so we have a word Kazakh. So Kazakh has a different connotation and a different. Kazakh is actually pronounced Kazakhstan. So it is not Kazakh. So never say Kazakh, it's Kazakhstan. With that, I thank you again, sir, and thank you very much to all the audience that participated. Thank you.
I will now request for the presentation of mementos. I will request our speaker, Mr. Rafiullah, to kindly receive his memento from Brigadier Rashid Ali Janjua. I will now request Brigadier Rashid Ali Janjua to kindly present a memento to the Ambassador of Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan, yes. Thank you for the correction.
Once again, please.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, now the wait between you and the lunch is over. The lunch is open. I will request all our participants and also our speakers and dignitaries